Hello everyone, and after a break for a few weeks, due to the hustle and bustle and hectic nature of getting ready for the NEC show, I am back, and today we're going to have a look at what I purchased at the NEC as well as discuss how I felt the show went. So stick with me and let's go take a look. So yes, we are back once again, and I'm going to run through all of my purchases at the National Festival of Railway Modelling Show at the NEC in Birmingham, and we'll also cover briefly my thoughts on the show itself, how I felt it went with the NTMA Modular Railway, and the show in general. So without further ado, let's introduce the first locomotive. So this, some of you may recognise, is an Oxford Rail radial tank, the Adams radial. And you're probably thinking, well, that's not your usual thing, Nick. What are you doing with one of those? And, well, first thought is, I don't honestly know. Second thought is, well, look at it. It's such a cute little thing. And this was in a box of, I don't want to say failed locomotives, but, or rejects. I mean, I suppose it is a reject in a way. But they had a bunch of these in various liveries and they all had issues. And this particular one was a grade D and cost me a grand total of £30. And when I first got it, that right there was full speed. Now the description on the box for their grade D is minor cosmetic imperfections, noisy / faulty motor, gear issues, damaged box. So, you know, I wasn't expecting great things. And as I say, when we first put it on the rolling road to test, that was max speed forwards. In reverse, there was nothing. And eventually we got it to do something in reverse. It would go about that far and then get hung up. Now actually, the more I run it, the more it does seem to be freeing up. Now there is a bit of a squeak, you probably just hear it there. But yeah, it's not massive, and for £30 I can't really complain. But as you'll see, if I give it a little nudge just to help it, the track might not be perfectly clean. But she's actually got a bit of a gallop about her now. And again in reverse. So I'd actually say for £30 I've got a bit of a bargain there. Now I know nothing about the full size things and steam really isn't my bag, but one of my fellow NTMA colleagues and LMM regular, Tom, you know him as the one who is always smiling and full of enthusiasm. Yeah, he has the same livery, and because we don't want to clash, and because I paid so little for this, and because, quite honestly, delivery means nothing to me, I figured if I bring this in, you can see it's lettered up for the EKR, which I believe is the East Kent Railway. Well, how about we get some decals and change that to TWN? So this could kind of be like a little channel mascot almost. We'll change the number on him as well. Could be a good candidate for practicing weathering. Maybe change, I mean, it's not a terrible coal load, but I think we can do better. Maybe get some Nuln oil on there from Citadel paint, see if we can give it a bit of sparkle. But yeah, it's, let's say, not a bad looking little thing, and for £30 I'm quite happy. Moving on, we come to my next set of purchases. Now the LMM team, when they go to these shows, they set themselves a little fun game or challenge of, can I buy a train for £25? And to define a train, that is a locomotive and suitable rolling stock for said locomotive. So basically a starter set for £25. And this year they very kindly invited me to join them in this pursuit. And what we have here is my entry, and this cost me the grand total of £22.50. So I actually came in under budget, which I'm told gets me bonus points. However, A, I have no idea how the points work, or if we're actually doing points, or who wins. And B, I purchased this wagon. However, I didn't look very closely, and you'll see it has the old Trian couplings, which means that it can't be part of my train. So technically I haven't done it properly and I lose points. However, it is a very nice wagon, I have to say, even if it was the wrong couplings. But it cost me just £3 for this, and we have a styrofoam coal load which has been chipped, but crucially this has sprung buffers. It's a very crude system, if you can see that, but it has sprung buffers. I mean, I can't tell if it's a kit built, or, I mean, if it is, the way they've managed, I've just realised I haven't got it in shot, but the way they've managed to get the decals to sit on that, if it's kit built, is amazing. It is an old Pico wagon, as you can see. But yeah, £3 I paid for that. So, what about the rest of the train? Does it run? Well, that was the question when I put it on the rolling road. It's very noisy, but it runs. But crucially, you'll notice someone added lamps to it, and it actually functions. So I'll bring that in a bit closer so you can take a look. So it's just a regular old Hornby 040. Let's say someone's added a little lamp that actually functions. See the cabling under there. They have added a driver and fireman in there. And there is a rear lamp as well that is wired. However, the rear lamp doesn't work. But I don't mind that because it's going to be running with a train behind it. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to giving that a service. But this was just £12.50, which came out of the pretty famous by now Ellis Clark rummage boxes, as did the rest of this train. So next up, not very happy running. So we've got some stiff wheels there, which I'll need to have a look at. If you look, that wheel's not actually square on the axle, so do need to swap that out or have a play. But what looks like a kit-built boxcar, you can see some glue, but this was just £2, and someone's put some brake pipes on there. Not sure what's going on with the buffers having these dots on, but yeah, £2, which I didn't think was too bad, and for a starter, you know, it would certainly do the job. And as I say, that axle isn't the end of the world, that can be fixed. Next up, we have goods fruit van. So it's Great Western in origin. This is a dapole model. So interim sized D there on the coupling, so it's not like your narrow tension locks that you find these days, but it's not the big old Hornby 00 triangle D shape either. And one of the reasons I've grabbed this is, well, it wouldn't look out of place in Outwell. So Outwell Basin, you know, I could happily run that. And likewise for the other box van, really. So again, £2 for that. And lastly, for 3 of my English pounds, I grabbed this. Because, you know, you got to have a brake van on a steam era. And it appears to have the world's tallest guard in there. But it is in there. And yeah, it's just, you know, your ordinary, if I can get that to focus and actually bring it into shot. So yeah, just your basic Hornby one. It's never going to stand up against the Rapido one, which I do also have a model of course. But yeah, for £3, can't complain. So yeah, you guys let me know. Good purchase, poor purchase, indifferent? Let me know in the comments. Now, the challenge train wasn't the only thing to come out of the Ellis Clark rummage trays. I also found this lovely pair of Walther's gondolas for £7. Now, there is a slight issue in that one of them is missing an axle, but I do have spares, so that isn't an issue. And the detail on it is pretty good, and they've got some good weight about them as well. So they have these removable coal loads, which is held up by a bit of sponge, and this appears to be resin by the weight of it. But yeah, for £7 I really can't complain at a pair of those, especially as I do have rather keen interest in American railroads as well as the Wisbech and Upwell. So I do hope to explore that in 2026. maybe get my HO gauge inglenook back up and running. Switching gear slightly, we go to a non-train/locomotive purchase, which comes from Tom over at Buckles Kelly Station. I had a visit with him, and unfortunately he was having a nightmare of a show because he was right opposite a stand that involved a game with very loud sound effects, and when these sounds went off, it was impossible to talk. Like, I would be discussing something with him, be halfway through a sentence, and you just get this wah wah wah, and it was so loud. Or the celebration thing that they did when someone won, and essentially all it was there was a G-scale train going around in a loop, and there was a tube that you had to drop a marble in, and the marble went down and went round the tube, and you had to try and land it in the wagons behind the G-scale train. And yeah, it was so annoying. We were on the other side of the hall, and it was annoying us, so commiserations to Tom for having to put up with that the entire show. But anyway, I went and visited him, and I brought 2 figures. The first of which is the Railway Director, because we don't want to be hit with any kind of copyright or anything. But I'm sure you know the fella I mean, who runs a certain railway on an island that features a cheeky blue 6-wheeled tank engine. Next of all, we have this figure, who I realise is upside down. And, well done, Tom. But if you can't recognise him, this is Bob Symes, and I first come across Bob Symes, I was actually in my teenage years, so I missed out on the programmes on TV. But I come across a VHS of a line-side look at model railways, where Bob Symes was the host, and I must have watched that VHS so many times. And Bob Symes, who sadly has passed away now, was such a great entertainer and narrator, and he just brought the subject to life. So when I heard that there was a chance to have a 00 gauge model of him, how could I resist? Okay, moving back onto rail vehicles. Can anyone guess what the next purchase was? And probably don't need to guess. I'll just bring him in. Is of course a Class 60. Now this is a Hornby model, and up until now I didn't own a mainline liveried Class 60. This cost me the grand total of £80, and it's pretty much faultless. I opened it up, and it is one of the earlier releases, so you can guess it. It's probably 10 years old at this point, and it comes in the old style foam tray, and you have to take the couplings off to get it in the box. However, when I took the bag of couplings out because I wanted to run it on the modular, the bag was still sealed, which means that either this model is new and has just sat in someone's collection until it was sold off and ended up on a stall at the NEC, or they just ran it on its own, or the third option is, of course, that they put different couplings in. But it certainly runs like a new loco. Certainly looks that way, and yeah, I'm delighted with my purchase. Now, my final rail related purchase is a little bit different. Well, what's different about it, you may be thinking. So this is another Hornby Class 66, which takes my total up to 12. And I am planning to do a video having a look at the whole collection so far and what I own, what manufacturer, so on and so forth. So that video will come, but what makes this one so special and a little bit different is I thought I had a bargain with £80 for the other one. This one only cost me 70. Now, it does have an issue in that it's missing a buffer on this corner. Not the end of the world because, well, I'm sure the likes of Peter Spares or someone will have spare buffer heads. Not the end of the world, as I say. However, for £70, I have a Hornby Class 60 that can do this. That's right, guys, it's DCC fitted. Now, it's not sound fitted. It is just a basic DCC loco. Taken away a bit quick there. But yeah, I am operating this right now, as you can see, on my old backup phone. And some of you may be saying, well, that's a waste of a Pixel 6 as a controller. And you may be right, but it's what I have. And yeah, for 70 of my English pounds, I have a DCC fitted Class 60. What do you guys think? Bargain? Not a bargain? And as I say, it's missing a buffer, so it's not perfect, but you know, the other three are all sprung buffers. There's the sprung doors. So yeah, bargain in my book, and it's a GBRF one, so it's the newest livery that I own, which is cool. But anyway, let's move on and have a look at my final purchase of the show. So, the final purchase I'm going to show you now was actually my first purchase at the show. This was very early on the Saturday morning. I believe the show hadn't even opened at this point. It's probably 45 minutes before anyone was allowed in the door. And myself and Lars were taking a walk around, and I come across this thing. Now, I've been looking at Carder for a while, and for anyone who isn't aware, Carder is one of the more modern brands that are Lego style, shall we say. So they're an alternative to Lego, because of course Lego no longer holds the patent for bricks with dots to connect. And yeah, I come across this and I was like, yes, I would very much like to get my hands on one of these, because as you can see, if I turn it up the right way, just £10. Now, they do also make a slightly larger brick count one. I'm not even sure how many bricks there are in this, but they had one that, I'd say, was a bit bigger, more Lego style, so had actual bricks rather than what you see here, which are definitely custom molded for this. And that was £15, but the shape didn't really appeal, whereas I wanted this not because it's Lego, but because I'm quite a fan of Initial D. I was going to say I'm a huge fan. I wouldn't go so far as say huge fan, but I am a fan of the live action film. Kind of like reading the magazines as well. So for £10, for half hours fun building whilst watching something on YouTube, why not? I figured. So yeah, fully licensed, as you can see, which is also cool. They've not only got the Initial D branding, they've got Toyota on here, and I'm sure if I put this in Google Translate, that is for Fujiwara tofu store. So yeah, that was my final purchase. And as for thoughts on the show, well, having gone to both shows now at the NEC in November, hosted by Warner's Group, which, first of all, thanks guys for inviting the NCMA both years. We've certainly never done anything as big as that before, and probably will never do anything that big again. So yeah, it's a real honour to get that invite for a start, and I have to say the show for me was very good. People are saying that it wasn't as big this year. I think actually part of it was down to a better layout. From what I saw, it was where we were last year, over by the cinema towards the back. Everything that was ahead of us down that side, it seemed very complicated to navigate. So because of that, it seemed more cramped and actually made it seem bigger because it took you more time to navigate. Whereas this year, it seemed much better laid out, to my mind at least. And yeah, I thought it was a good show. And they certainly seem to have more seating where the food vendors were towards the back. I still see around lunchtime, when I went for my lunch, there were people sat against the wall on the floor. So possibly still not enough seating for the peak time. Although this could be that the people sitting down also were just people who took their own lunch and didn't feel comfortable sat in front of the vendors eating their own food. That's just a guess on my part, though. I don't know that for sure. I didn't pay enough attention. But as I say, I really enjoyed the show. And as far as the NCMA went, overall, yeah, very positive. We were set out a brief of, can you come back this year and bring us something new? And I think we certainly delivered on that. Not every module was new this year. There was returns of favourites like Subsidence, which is Laurie from LMM's module. We had the museum returned, however, Loz did put a lot of work into that. The museum building was completely rebuilt. The track work on it was fully redone. So that was all operating. We had tags module was a return, but again, that always seemed popular. It's able to operate as a small shunting layout in its own respect, whilst being part of the larger modular. But yeah, we had quite a few new modules. It was all laid out differently as well, and we were a full C shape, which we haven't been able to do before. So that was exciting. And barring the odd sort of operator error, certainly day one was very successful. I'm told that there was a slight incident on day two. However, I wasn't there, so I can't really comment on what happened. But again, overall, it seemed to be very well received. I know my own module with the windmill from a very well-known TV programme for children featuring a blue six-wheeled tank engine that's very cheeky. That got a lot of attention, which I was very happy about. If you came up and asked questions about that or showed your appreciation, thank you very much for that. That was a massive boost to sort of my well-being and how I perceived the show, really. My module last year, which was this one, of course, Outwell Basin, didn't seem to get the same level of attention, despite it being the main sort of loop on the track. You know, other modules were more popular, and I say this year it did seem to switch. Teardown, very good, very efficient. Last year we had a large van, so we kind of threw all, well, not literally threw, but put all the modules into the one van, drove away and distributed it to our respective vehicles. This year we weren't able to do that, so we had to, as a result, bring 4 vehicles into the hall. So that kind of had an impact on teardown time, because you had 4 people that had to leave to go get the vehicles to bring in the hall. But the guys who weren't going to get vehicles, they did a great job with teardown. Of course, when we got back, we were able to help with that. And yeah, just a great show all round, both as a visitor and an exhibitor in my case. But anyway, before I ramble on too much longer and keep you for too much longer, if you have made it this far, thank you ever so much for watching the videos. Let me know what you think of my purchases. We'll just shift that out of the way. £150 on 2 Hornby Class 60s. We've got our £30 Oxford or Adams radial at the back there. And of course, we have the £22.50 challenge train. Alright, that's going to be it for this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye for now.